Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love, because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com. Life Audio.
The Bible Study Podcast, episode 922. Today, the Bible Study Podcast continues the study of the book of Luke with more of chapter 6. Welcome to the Bible Study Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. We're going to continue on with more of chapter 6, including some of Jesus' most famous teaching. But first, a word from this sponsor.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love, because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
I said that we're going to cover some of Jesus' most famous teaching, but we're not going to do that first. First, we're going to call some apostles, the 12 apostles. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who is called the Zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. So there's some familiar names in there. Obviously, we already had the story of the calling of Simon, Andrew, James, and John, the fishermen. Now, Matthew, we believe, is Levi. There are multiple people here, including Simon and Peter, for instance, who have Simon, who is also called Peter, who have different names. But that is traditionally, we believe that Levi, who is the tax collector, is Matthew, and then is also the writer of the Gospel of Matthew. Within this set of people, he is one of two that are gospel writers, John obviously being the other one who writes the fourth and final gospel, fourth chronologically. Mark is not one of these, and neither is Luke. Luke, in fact, won't come to believe until some years from now, and Mark is a young man at this time. But these are the apostles, and when we say apostle, the word apostolos in Greek means to be sent. And so they are being sent into the world, not just yet, but that will happen, and so he calls them that. And of course, it's interesting in there that he spends all night praying first off. And that seems like a pretty good thing to do if you're going to make a big decision about who's going to do what. And then, of course, it's odd that he spends all night praying and ends up with one of the 12 as a traitor, although, of course, we know that that was part of the plan. But it does seem like an odd thing nonetheless. And then we get blessings and woes. And this is the teaching part that I mentioned. You may recognize this. This is what we call the Sermon on the Plain. Matthew would have the Sermon on the Mount. These are a lot of the same teachings, and so he probably used some of the same teachings in different places. But it's a little different than the more familiar Sermon on the Mount from Matthew. And it says, he went down with them and stood on a level place. The large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem and from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming from him and healing them all. So he is on a plain. There's a large number of people, and it says they're coming from Judea, but it also says from around Tyre and Sidon, and that is very significant because Tyre and Sidon are not Jewish cities. They're Phoenician cities or Canaanite cities, and so it would imply that there are people here who aren't Jewish. So that is interesting, and of course, Luke, as we said, one of his messages is that Jesus is for everyone. So that might be why he highlights the Sermon on the Plain and Matthew the Sermon on the Mount. And then it says they come to hear him and to be healed. So the healing is certainly a drawing. And so he is healing. He is casting out impure spirits. And then he is also going to be teaching. And it says, looking at his disciples, he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you, and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man." Now, I will admit I have some difficulties with, in terms of understanding both the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, this whole blessed are the poor, yours is the kingdom of God. Because, not just because if we look at the world, I am definitely not one of the poorest people. It's not just that, but I don't think that we're intended to have a Christianity that is just pie in the sky when you die by and by. That, this life doesn't matter because you got another one. But this verse here certainly puts that thought in my head that it's better to have a bad life here so you can have a good life there. But something, I think, to put this in context, remember elsewhere Jesus says that it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel to get through the eye of a needle. So Jesus has a lot of things to say about money. He says to one rich man who wants to follow him, he says, "Great, just give everything you have away and come follow me." Now, he doesn't say that to every rich man, but he certainly says it to one. And so we know that for some of us, at least, riches get in the way. We know that if we have everything, we may not realize we need something else that is more important. And I look at these verses here, these first two verses, "Blessed are you hungry now, for you will be satisfied," in that context, through that lens. Now, we have the story elsewhere of Lazarus and the rich man, and Lazarus who is sitting outside while the rich man is eating, and then they end up in heaven in reverse places. So we have to say that Jesus has a lot to say about money, and he is not pro-rich. Riches can get in the way. "Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh." Now, is that saying someday, by and by, that we will laugh, or that the relationship with Jesus will bring joy? I think now. I don't think that's a after you die sort of thing. And then this last section here is more specific. "Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you, reject your name as evil." And that would, if we left it there, it would mean one thing, but it continues, "because of the Son of Man." Basically, blessed are you when people hate you because of me, when they exclude you because of me, when they insult you because of me, when they reject your name as evil because of me. Because, especially in light of the three verses we had in front of that, following Jesus can be quite countercultural. In our current culture, the things that go against our current culture in the direction that my country, for instance, is moving, is that Jesus calls us to care about the poor and the outcast and the stranger and the neighbor. That Jesus calls us to turn the other cheek, that Jesus calls us to bring peace. And that is countercultural. And I've heard people who are trying to do those things have insults attached to them for trying to be like Jesus. So we see that it happened then, but it still happens today, even in a quote-unquote Christian country. "Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven, for that is how their ancestors treated the prophets." He's saying, if people are giving you a hard time because you're doing the right thing, keep going. "But woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will go hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when everyone speaks well of you, for that is how their ancestors treated the false prophets. So, false prophets, who people are speaking well of, then we're talking about people who are doing things consistent with what the world values. And what does our world value? Our world values money and power. And if you have money and power, it's the golden rule. If you have the gold, you make the rules. Jesus is not pro-rich. Jesus is concerned for those people who are comfortable now, who are satisfied now. And I think the reason he is concerned is they may not know that they lack something greater. We may not know that we lack something greater. And when everybody's speaking nice of us, he says, be careful, because the world is not consistent. The world is heading in a direction away from God. And I don't just mean, and this is really important that we hear this, I don't just mean the world is heading in the direction away from going to church. I think some of the things that are happening in our churches are moving in a direction that is away from God. There are false prophets. And be careful. And with that, we're going to end this episode of the Bible Study Podcast. And if you have any questions, send an email to chris2x@gmail.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at thebiblestudypodcast.com. And thanks so much for listening. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Praying Christian Women, the podcast that brings Christian women together to talk about the deep questions about prayer that we're all thinking, but sometimes afraid to ask. Hi, I'm Jamie Hampton, and my podcast partner Alana Terry and I would absolutely love for you to join us as we discuss what it means to be a woman of prayer in the 21st century. This podcast will be your go-to for biblical encouragement, inspiration, and practical tips to equip you with the tools you need to live out a more passionate, powerful prayer life. Tune in now at lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcasting app,